We're good.
It's going. Okay. Welcome everyone to our special virtual school committee meeting. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-05 issued by the Governor of the State of Rhode Island, this meeting will be conducted by electronic communication only. Members of the public wishing to access this meeting may do so at https://YOUTU:/BE\/LXLW_S_R_O. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to the new business. The first item is decision of the building committee presentation of the new website.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Dr. Thornton, fellow colleagues, public community members. I'm very excited this evening to be able to present a project that the building committee has been working on since early January. And that is the development of a new website that will better inform the community as we progress through all the various capital projects the school department's taken on. I'm very excited this evening. So as we share the screen, I'll bring up the website. Currently, we have a web page on the main website of the Warwick Public Schools. What we're looking, I'm hearing feedback. So I'm ready to share the screen, present the website we'll walk through. As I had started to mention, was the current Warwick Public Schools website has a page for the building committee, which has been very problematic in updating on a periodic basis. This is much easier, and we expect it to be more fluid over the course of the next couple of years. So again, I want to thank the building committee, and I want to thank the technology department in Warwick Public Schools for their assistance in bringing this to fruition in such short order. So can everybody see the Warwick Public Schools website?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. As you'll notice, this is warwickpublicschools.org, and under the department tab, there's a new tab called Building Committee. By clicking on that, we're going to go live. Come on. Why is it flaking out on me? There we go. On the home page, we have, let me move this out of the way. We have the reason why the building committee existed. It's based on the Warwick Public Schools recommended long-term master plan. It's taken almost 10 years to pull this project sequence together. We also break down the responsibilities of the building committee, where some communities, the building committee actually spearheads the recommendations of projects. Warwick Public Schools, and I'll show you in a couple of minutes, started almost 10 years ago having community-based committees. And then they moved towards a consultant-based advisory relationship. and that cultivated into actually moving forward with adopted plans. And during that process, they created a building committee to execute the construction of the projects that were approved by the school committee, as well as approved by the funding of the city of Warwick and the taxpayers and the voters. So we really are driven by plans that have been vetted publicly leading up to the community voting on the referendums. So on the first page, we actually show on the left-hand corner the agendas of the next meetings coming up. It hasn't been released yet, so there's nothing in that category. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 6th. We do meet at 7:30 in the morning. The archival information is our prior meeting agendas. And so by clicking on either the picture or the narrative, we have them broken down by calendar year. And so by clicking on the 2021, we've actually had 3 meetings. We meet once a month, March, February, and January. And if you go back and look, there are a number of periods going back to 2016 since the inception of the building committee. So all the archival information is available for reference. On the prior meeting minutes, once the building committee approves minutes from prior meetings, we are organizing those. And so we had 3 meetings so far, 2021, but we've only approved 2 meeting minutes, January and February. At our April meeting, we'll approve the March minutes, and then they'll be posted for public for review and reference as the future goes on. We plan on continuing this model for the duration of the phase 1, phase 2, and ultimately if a high school plan is put into place, phase 3. And all the history will be stored on this particular website for references. We hope people will contact us. They can either email me directly with either questions or comments with regards to anything that we're doing, as well as if they want to join our building committee email list. Monthly, we send out the agenda and we send out minutes from prior meetings that have been approved. And we're happy to put folks on that mail list so they can be kept apprised of what we're doing, as well as we're starting to develop a quarterly type of newsletter, and especially if the high school project takes off, and we'll be forwarding that to folks who've signed up. So please feel free to join us by sending us your email address, and we'll take care of getting the information out to you. So how did we get here? So a little background is under the planning tab, planning assessment and the application process. We have an executive summary for folks to be able to reference of what transpired, when it started, etc. And as we're aware, there are 3 phases. Phase 1 was the $40 million bond, and that was for our most pressing needs in the district. Phase 2 focuses on our middle school and elementary schools. Primarily, the HVAC systems are going to be at all the elementary and middle schools. And then lastly, and we'll hear a little more about this a little later this evening, phase 3, if that moves forward, it's dealing with the renovation, the indoor reconstruction, indoor new high schools. And so we'll hear more about that later this evening. What we're storing here, again, is the archival information. As I had mentioned before, I want folks to understand the due diligence that the school committee has put into making this 3-phase plan. We started back in November 2011 with long-term facility committees that were populated by community members. So the school committee had 2 actual startups with community member participation, and then they moved into hiring a consultant, which is SMMA, which led to where we are today. What we've put into this first tab are meeting minutes going back to November 3rd, 2011. This was the first meeting that took place of the Long-Term Facilities Planning Committee. And so as you can see, 2011, 2012, 2013, there was a hiatus point between 2012 and 2013. They reestablished the Long-Term Facilities Committee with a host of new players and participants. And then we moved forward into 2015 when we hired a consultant, SMMA. all the history for referral purposes is here. This brings us right up to January 29th, 2020, when the school committee adopted the $56 million, which is the phase 2 plan. Moving forward, as we deal with the high school projects, we are going to maintain a page, and I'll show you that in a moment, of what's transpiring with the high school. But once we've adopted a plan and we're moving forward with it, then we'll move all the high school information into this archival area, and we'll stay current with the high school plans as they proceed. So what you're going to see is there's redundancy from phase 1 to phase 2 in presentation. So once you understand our presentation, hopefully it'll be a source of information to keep you apprised of what we're doing. We've had considerable conversations about SMMA being a consultant that provided a report to us back in August 27th, 2015. The full report is here. The state actually engaged in having a report and assessment. We provided a copy of that. And then lastly, the school department pursues housing aid with the state. And so we're providing copies, extensive copies of the actual applications that we send into the Rhode Island Department of Ed. So our phase 1, $40 million housing aid is broken down into the stage 2 and stage 1 submissions. They are 1,000-page documents, so feel free to read them if you so wish, but it gives you an idea of what it's taken to achieve the things that we've achieved. So again, that's our planning and assessment history as to how we've got here. If anybody ever wanted to say, you know, is this happened suddenly? How can you guys come up with these decisions? No, it's a duly vetted process that's been ongoing for the better part of 10 years. We do have a tab for our committee members. So here's your contact information, who's on the board, their affiliation with Warwick Public Schools, and the role as defined by the Rhode Island Department of Education, and how to contact the various members. You can email us and or call us. Now to dive into the meat of the website, bond phase 1, $40 million. And so we did try to, because it's focused on students, we've got pictures of students of our initial flyers back from when we were soliciting support for our referendums. I'm going to come back to this section, but we're going to have pictures of projects. And I think that's going to be the most enlightened piece for all of us to keep an eye on what's going on. The pictures are going to be constantly updated, and I'll get into that in a moment. But before getting there, once we've got approvals, we will keep the approval tabs available for folks so they can say what makes up the $40 million. This is the school committee's adopted $40 million program. By clicking on it, it opens up the document that is the official document that we are working towards, and it provides detail as well as summary data with regards to the types of projects, how much we're planning on spending, et cetera, what schools were affected. So feel free to read that at your leisure. The cash request, annually, school committee adopts a cash request to the city. And right now we've got 3 cash requests that have been approved. The most recent one for $9 million, the second one was 9.8, and the first one was $6 million. So it shows you by color what type of projects we're taking on a cash release basis. RIDE has approved housing aid. So while I showed you a moment ago the application process, the actual documents supporting what the Warwick Public Schools is expected to receive from the state of Rhode Island are these approved documents that show you their approval for the $40 million bond was actually a total tally of $45 million because it includes right here, $45 million. It includes $5 million of capital reserve, which is other sources of funding that the school department may have from time to time. And so that's also recapturable. And lastly is the transparency of our fiscal progress on each of the 3 phases of cash release. So monthly, we will be downloading the financial information from the accounting system, and annually, our accounting system is audited by the city auditors. And so the bonds are actually being audited by the city, but we're reporting monthly as to what's transpiring. So again, by clicking on that title, as I had mentioned, we've got 3 cash releases. So we've got 3 reports: cash release 1, cash release 2, cash release 3. And under cash release 1, they're all identical in setup, but just to show you, as of March 9th, excuse me, March 6th, 9th, stand corrected, up in the left-hand corner, March 9th was the last update. The report shows you by school what projects are being funded out of that source of money for that year. So Drum Rock had fire safety and interior work, the Welk at JBF fire safety and interior work, the total budget that's been approved, and in phase 1 cash release, what portion of the total budget was actually funded. And then we're reporting encumbrances and payments made, and then showing remaining balances to be completely transparent. We will be updating if the contracts are awarded and if the projects are completed. That's the last step. We haven't quite completed that last 2 columns, but we're going to finish that up with all our reports. So each of the cash releases on an annual basis will be sustained until all of them have been utilized. And if we are under budget, the community will see it. And if we are over budget, we'll see where we may have redeployed resources, because the money is in the bank and we will be spending the money. And if there's projects that are outside the scope of this, I'll be coming back to the school committee with recommendations as to what other projects we may be able to take on if in fact we're successful in coming in under budget, which we have been pretty successful at so far for most of our contracts. And so we will maximize the utilization of the cash to better our buildings. But this is going to be done monthly. Typically around the first week of each month, we will update this because that gives the accounting department an opportunity to close the books for the previous month. Thus, March 9th would be up through February 28th. So I saved the best for the end. A lot of information here, going to be repetitively updated on a routine basis, but what's the excitement? We've got pictures for every single school that has projects within this particular bond. I'm going to show you Hoxie. They all have been set up the same way, but Hoxie has photo albums that are representative of all the various types of opportunities that we have within our photo album catalog. So first, the scope of projects that have been approved within the cash allocated from the $40 million bond for Hoxie. We have fire safety, we have interior work, we have ADA, we have a playground, and we have a roof. So those are the 5 things we're going to do at Hoxie out of the $40 million. And as you can see, we're celebrating the completion of the fire safety, and we've taken pictures, and they will just scroll through so you get to see what's been accomplished. The interior project has not been scheduled yet. The ADA project has been scheduled. We received funding to pay for the architect and design. And so we have a note here to let folks know, September design, construction July 2022. What I can tell you is as this project progresses, we will be putting in pictures of what it looks like today and as it progresses through its steps in construction phase and then ultimately the finished product. Under the playground, we're in design phase. So we're designing now. We went out to bid. Construction will start July 2021. Oops. And then lastly,
I texted you. You didn't get it. 2022 bond vote, right?
I'm sorry. Well, I think it's another issue. And then lastly, the roof has been completed at Hoxie. So these are photo albums. We're able to put in as many pictures as we can, and we will be. And so come back periodically. I hope that the communities will come out and take a look at their schools, see what projects have been included in their particular school for each section of the funding that's available. So that's the $40 million bond. Now, similarly, $56 million bond. I'm not going to click them because they're very similar, but the details are the same. And under the pictures, I'm going to just jump to Hoxie. And as you can see, Hoxie in the phase 2 has exterior work to be done, has a mechanical HVAC system. We are designing the HVAC system for Hoxie, and we will be beginning construction in the summer of 2022 for their HVAC system, as well as the electrical. So within the 56 million, there's 3 projects for Hoxie, and every school is set up this way so everybody can go and see what their school is going to get for each of the 2 sources of funds that we have available. And as we can see, there's no high school because we deferred, and that will be the next piece. And as I mentioned, right now in the high school phase is about the planning. And so all of the presentations that Mr. Locker is putting together, we're putting them into either a community workshop, a school committee presentation, or Mr. Locker's own category for all the various reports and analysis that he's giving us. So there's going to be lots of information that's coming out and pictures and potential plans. So once the school committee adopted plan comes in, we're going to post it here. And as we progress through the housing aid application process, we'll maintain that information here. As we go to bond referendum, we'll maintain that information here. Everything about the high schools will be here, and if a category doesn't exist, we'll create it and we'll keep updating it. Hopefully, eventually, we'll reach the same stage as bond phase 1, phase 2. When we reach that with the high school piece, we'll take all of the planning and put it on the planning page, and we'll just make this very similar to the phase 1, phase 2 layout with pictures of the projects, what the approved plans are, etc. So it'll be very similar, but because we haven't adopted anything and nothing's been approved, this is going to be more focused on where are we today. I'm very excited about all of these pieces because it's easy for our staff to update it. And because it's easy to update, we expect to maintain it, which means it's going to be of interest to the community, and we encourage you to come out and check it out. The last thing I wanted to show is our bidding tab. It's both for vendors who are interested in bidding and also for community members to understand what we've done to get to where we are. And so there's some instructions here for the bidders potentially, but I think what's interesting for the public is we have an active bid list. This is what's on the street today. And it lists the type of schools, what the project is, what the project numbers are, and when it's due, and when we released it. So we advertised February 25th, and it's going to be opening March 25th. And so those will be coming to the school committee. That's what we're currently managing. We're going to keep a bid history. So the most recent bid awards are the ADA playgrounds, et cetera, which are down in this category. This cluster right here, which is all the roofs, we're assessing the bids today. They opened on February 25th. We have not gone to school committee yet. We're planning on going to school committee, hopefully the special meeting, because we want to get the contracts out, but at the latest would be the April meeting. So once the school committee is awarded, we'll update this information for the community to be able to sustain it. All of the bids that are associated with our bonds will be located here. And so we go back to our first bids that were released back in March of 2019. So this is going to continue through the duration of all of our bidding for all 3 phases of our projects. And then lastly, in support of the bid history, the copies of each of the school committee recommended bid awards. So anybody who's interested in saying you gave a bid award for a roof, well, I want to see it. You come and look at the bid number, and you can look up what the actual recommendation was and what the school committee considered before making an award. That really helps us with our public requests for documents, this is going to be a point of reference for those folks. So that's the website in a nutshell. What I want to share with you is this is the direct email, website address. If folks want to write it down, feel free. If not, as I had showed you at the beginning of my demonstration, feel free to go to Warwick Public Schools website, and the building committee button is found underneath the department dropdown. Either way will get you to our website. Again, we're hoping this is a source of transparency and communication connection to the community. Please feel free to email us with information or questions, join our mailing list, stay engaged, and keep an eye out for the pictures, because we're really excited about what we're achieving, and we're really excited as we move forward, because now we're into 3 years in the first phase, and phase 2 we're into the first year. So there's going to be a lot of great things happening in the district. Thank you very much. Again, thank you to the technology department and the building committee for their assistance in getting this off the ground this year. Thank you. Any questions, Madam Chair? Any comments?
Madam Chair, I have one.
I think she might have disconnected.
Oh, I think we lost her. Oh, well, all right, I'll go. Mr. Ferrucci, thank you. It is very transparent that there's a lot of meat there. So, you couldn't just make it real simple, like a couple of clicks away. You appeal to the geek side of me with all of the information that's in there, because that's information that I think as a member of the public and a taxpayer in the city, I'd want to know and have easy access to. And I think you laid it all out there. So I'm pleased. I thank you and the technology department and anyone else who had a hand in that, because it is good stuff. And if you take pride in your community and your schools and you want to see what's going on, it's an easy place to go and check it out. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I guess next we move to discussion on high school master planner presentation. Mr. Locker?
Yes, I have to unmute. Okay, I'm all set. All right. Thank you. And I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share with you. It will be posted on the website. One more thing for Tony to do. But what I'd like to do is, in the interest of time, go through these slides. There's about 10 slides, and then open up for questions. Is that a good way of working?
That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
proceed.
Okay, and then I'll need to take over the screen.
Okay.
All right, so I have permission for that?
Oh, yes, you have permission to do
Yes,
that.
you do. I made you a co-host, Frank.
Oh, okay, great. All right, so you should be able to see this. Let me get it on, get it on slideshow. Okay. All right. So as I say, I've got a presentation. It's about 10 slides, and I'll go through that rather briskly in the interest of time, and then be glad to take questions. I'll also comment that Ed Bourget, my master planning partner, is here as well. He's muted. In the interest of time, I'll do the presentation, but he's certainly available for questions. He's the architect on the team. I'm the educational planner on the team. So what we have here is an outline of where we've been and what the agenda is. Don't need to read this. You'll see it coming in just a second to you. And then I also covered the process. We presented to you about a year ago and covered many aspects of the process. We've since had the community meeting, and then we've been doing our writing. So we're quite ways down here on the overall process. What I would like to share first are our visioning concepts, because as was requested of us, in the RFP, this was facilities planning based on educational concepts. We led a process to develop these concepts. We had about 50 of your stakeholders for 2 or 3 days working together. And these concepts, which are outlined here, are the key elements for what they developed, and also very important for guiding us in terms of making the buildings. I'm not going to read every one of these. I'm going to simply highlight some of them. Bottom line, 21st century learning and teaching. School districts all over the country are working hard to make the shift from 20th century, when many of their buildings were built, to 21st century. And some aspects of that are outlined below. Integrated learning, breaking down the traditional separations between the content areas in a high school, building relationships through the normal part of the day, because we know that kids learn better when they're in strong relationships. Focus on social emotional skills, sometimes called essential skills, as well as content knowledge. Students working together, shift to a longer class period so students can do deeper work. Here's a real critical one: offer CTC in both schools, not just Tollgate, and then support teachers working together full-time with a larger cohort of students. Very different than what we're used to from the 20th century. On facilities concepts, and these incorporate many of the educational concepts. This first one, however, is paramount. Think of the facilities as platforms for long-term change, not stuck in one year that they were designed in. We want to empower the educators to be able to change and not be restricted by their buildings. Arrange spaces as small learning communities. Again, getting to that relationship concept. Use every square foot of space for learning that you can. That generally means making corridors wider and shorter so we can put furniture in them and use them for real learning, not just walking. Make classrooms that are flexible and then tied into extended learning areas. That's the shorter, wider corridors. Interdisciplinary possibilities, yes. And then a variety of furnishings. So this is not just about making the buildings itself, but it's selecting the furnitures so that they offer lots and lots of choices for teachers and students. Oops, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. And we developed an overall diagram, or I should say your stakeholders developed an overall diagram, and we use this in our thinking about doing the facilities planning. They had real concern for a community zone, which would be inviting to the public and would be one-stop shopping for those most likely functions that the public would be coming to: auditorium, gymnasiums, cafeteria. They wanted to rethink the cafeteria as a kid magnet, a place where kids would want to be whenever they could. And then in the academic zone, centered around the media center, library, in a very traditional relationship, but then small learning communities that integrated, you can see them in the gray, CTC in every one of them. So that was the overall concept. We endeavored to meet that, whether we were looking at renovations or whether we were looking at new construction. And for these facility, for the facility concepts, we developed them. And by the way, we developed 4 of them for Pilgrim and 5 of them for Tollgate. Incorporate not only the educational vision that I just shared with you, but the responses we got at the community meeting. We wanted to develop practical and cost-effective planning strategies. We developed a range of building and site options for each of the 2 schools. So when I say 4 for Pilgrim and 5 for Tollgate, this covered the range from minimal modification to the exterior shell in plan to brand new construction, and several nuanced in between. In all of them, we incorporated the synthetic football field that the city had approved while we were doing our study. We coordinated with that consultant and integrated their costs as well as any planning that they had done. We have looked at upgrading both buildings to current ADA, as well as other building codes. And we are calculating that all of the systems of the building would be upgraded to best practices. So that includes mechanical systems and lighting and structure, as well as waterproofing systems and window systems and, basically everything. Goal being to make the kind of buildings you're going to want to own for the next 50 years or 60 years or 70 years as reality sets in. So these are the planning options, the facilities planning options for Pilgrim. And I'll just quickly outline what these were. They go from, as I say, the least invasive, if you will. I'm not sure I like that term, but the one that keeps most of the building footprint in the upper left, that's the A option, to all the way through a variety, ending up with new construction. That's the one, that's the D option. So the concept of A was to accept what you had and see what could be done to modify it without affecting most of the building. And oh, by the way, believe it or not, according to RIDE guidelines, Pilgrim square footage is too small for the population served. Standards of RIDE on a square foot per basis for students is actually higher than when this building was built. So, so this one, for example, has an addition to account for that square footage. But the main building blocks are there. The corridor to nowhere still remains there. And then we've got that addition. Here, this is the synthetic football field and the same footprint as the current one. The next option up, we began to make step-by-step changes to the building. And so the next option up, we increased the educational aspects of it by taking the courtyard spaces and putting additions on the edges of the courtyards. Pilgrim has really wonderful courtyard spaces, but they're really underutilized. And my experience in doing this kind of planning work is that in order to make courtyards like that really effective for the school, we have to make them very purposeful. And so the idea here was to take, and instead of simply having corridors along them were general classrooms, to put spaces along them that could take advantage of the outside spaces much more than, say, a typical classroom. So it might be an art lab with outdoor working spaces, or even a place to throw a pot outside. It could be spaces for poetry slam or reading circles, but very purposely designed that way. So that was the intent of this. Additionally, other additions that were very strategic, say a front entryway to give safety and security that the building doesn't really have right now. And you'll notice that the size of the addition at the back has shrunk because we've redistributed where those additions would go throughout the building. The next step up was one where we basically said, okay, on those first two additions, we've spent a lot of money, but we haven't really done anything to change the character or give the message that this building is a 21st century building. And it would be in just about all aspects, except for the physical planning, because this long gangly building is not very 21st century. But so we did 21st century systems upgrade on what is in essence a 20th century plan. But the option C, we made a major shift by rethinking what the addition was going, what the attitude was going to be to the additions. And what we said was, let's put the addition across the front and make it a two-story addition. So we're compacting the circulation. It's a whole lot easier to walk 15 feet upstairs or downstairs than it is to walk 200 feet or 300 feet horizontally. I mean, Pilgrim as a one-story building is a case study in that. So this is the building that would have a completely new facade. It would give a new message to the public. And we gave it a title. This is our community hug, because it makes a major gesture to the community by taking the big boxes that are most likely community destinations, the gym, the cafeteria, and the auditorium, and putting them close to each other. Your current building does not have that. So you do not have in the current building a good logical safety and security controls. But as we move to option C, we're able to get those controls. So major difference. And we figured that in essence, while this was serving students much better because of shortened circulation, you can see the dotted lines here where the old building was. We're making a major gesture to the community here. You can also see, and I'll comment on it here, we've redone the parking and the bus drop-offs and made them much more compact. And in doing so, we've picked up some land behind the building, available land to add more athletics fields. So this is the option where we begin to see that sports fields, athletics and phys ed have a bonus because the building is reducing in its footprint. The last option, option D, is new construction. And the best way to do new construction, the most efficient way to do new construction is to find a spot on the site where we can build a building in one phase and then move without removing anything on the existing building, and then move all the students into the new building, the students and teachers and administration. So we believe that this corner of the site is workable and probably the only choice. And then we took the spot where the parking was and where part of the building is, and we made a very simple, rational parking lot, and then put playfields, distributed playfields across the back. Now, this is a 3-story building. It's very compact. It has a fire loop around it, and it is probably as tight as it can be. So those are the 4 options that we did for Pilgrim. You can see the costs on these. This is in 2021 dollars, and they're ranging from about 140,000 to hovering around 140, then one at 196, and then a jump here up to almost 200,000. And then next slide. On Tollgate, we again did a similar range of options. Tollgate's a very different kind of a building with very different challenges. So the options are a little bit different. In all of these, I'll comment, however, that we are proposing to build a sports field over where Broad Rock is. You can just see a little bit of it here, and that's consistent in all of the schemes. We are picking up the cost for the synthetic football field, and we've got a practice field outlined right next to it. So back to the sequence with minimally invasive, starting for option A. This is the option A. You can see a red mark here. This is the required state mandated size addition, which would be classrooms and labs and things like that on the upper level. The other functions are pretty much the way they are. Then the next option for just about $2 million more, we cut a hole in the building, because the big problem with this, and that's, you see the library in the middle, the big problem with Tollgate, well, I'd say one of many big problems with Tollgate, but is that it's a windowless building. Many classrooms do not have windows. We know that that makes everything more difficult. It makes ventilation more difficult, but it also makes the day drone on. So this notion was to cut a courtyard in the middle of the building and turn formerly windowless classrooms into windowed classrooms, making a substantial change with very substantial impact with very little change. We've also widened out the bridges so that those are useful. We're trying to make every bit of circulation functional. So by widening it, we can put some functions on it. And we've redistributed, some of the functions within the building. The next option is our option C, and what we've done here is taken that courtyard and made it an interior, like a food court mall space, with the classrooms looking into it. A skylight ceiling, but that is our media center, smack dab in the middle of the building, well lit, great light and air, and on several different levels. And I've pulled through my files and shared the examples of this in schools in other places, and that's in our full report. So the details you will be able to look at. However, we think that this is a significant gesture that not only meets the functional requirements, but will create a sense of community. My prediction is that this is a kid magnet. And we need kid magnets in our schools. We've got other things here, including the widening of the bridges, et cetera. Then the next option is this started out as an option to do new construction, but we found that because of the reasonably good condition of the spaces that are on the lower side of the parking, and because there's very little land available, what we chose to do was put a major addition on the parking lot adjacent to those existing functions, and then of course a reorganization of those functions. So not quite new construction, but it in line with one of our guiding principles was to keep this practical and as reasonably simple as possible. It would have added more cost and more and much more difficulty in the logistics of moving people around if we cavalierly knocked those existing buildings over. So this is a very different kind of a building, and the parking is very different. And what we looked at was putting parking on the upside of the drop-off where the building was on several different levels, including up here by the sports fields, and then a set of steps modeled after the Spanish steps in Rome, if any of you are familiar with it, for navigating from one parking level to the other. And our guess is that that will be a kid magnet after school, and then you wait till there's a game day. It'll be wild. It'll be really popular. And then lastly, so this one had a courtyard in it, and then last capturing the same qualities that B had. Then lastly, we had another variant on new construction, and this recreated the concept of C on the inside. So this had C was the big media center, food court type space in the middle of the building, surrounded by learning spaces. This is a similar concept. So it captures the spirit of that, but for a bit more money. So those are the 5 toll gate options. Then what our team did is we assessed these with some very simple scoring, and then we ranked them, we rated them on a 1 to 5 scale. So here's our 4 different options for Pilgrim. Here's our 5 different options for Tollgate, and then here are the scores with the costs that I just shared with you. Those are in 2021 dollars. And then because we've had a year of COVID and timing has been adjusted, we did a projection forward to picking up the project and then looking at a bond vote at the end of next year. We don't know what that escalation is going to be, so we did a range of 3.5% to 5%. So the numbers that I just shared with you for both Pilgrim and for Tollgate are up, 3.5% to 5%, and we'll have to wait and see for what that turns out to be. And then looking at this in detail, a little more detail anyway, this is the recommended scheme for Pilgrim, option C, the community hug, the one where we would be putting a 2-story addition at the front of the building, creating a completely new statement to the community, concentrating most likely public functions into one zone of the building, consolidating parking and making it much more compact. You can see the footprint of the removed sections of the building here, and then adding more play fields, another baseball field, 5 more tennis courts over here, and then a play field over here. And then of course there's the synthetic football field. which is incorporated in the dollars projections. And then for Tollgate, we are also recommending C. This is the renovation that that puts the media center here in almost like a food court quality, skylit, classrooms looking onto it. And this we call the heart of the building. And as I said earlier, we think that this is going to be a kid magnet. And that's not a bad thing to have in a school. So this is the end of the presentation. I will be glad to go back to any one of these. I see Phil raised his hand, and how do do we have a chat room open?
Oh, hi there, Ed. Frank, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Just a question for maybe Ed. I know I asked this before, but it's good for the public to hear it. Can you speak briefly to Pilgrim? And I know, folks have been fearful it may be on ground that is not, super solid. So what safeguards do you do as you look at new construction or construction to make sure we're building on ground that's not going to, have a problem sinking?
Yeah, so I've heard similar things myself. To begin with, we've done assessments of the building, and not just us. There was also there was a different team, the Jacobs team, that did assessments of the existing conditions for the state. And basically, in general, the building is solid. There's no sort of structural cracks that are apparent. There's no evidence of sinking or differential movement within the building. So there's nothing there to sort of support that fear. Moving forward with a new design, with any addition that would occur around the building, we would bring on a geotechnical engineer, and the geotechnical engineer would conduct borings. And with that, they would get a very clear understanding of the makeup, the composition of the ground, and also things like the groundwater level. So with that, we would be able to design foundations that are appropriate for that specific area. But again, I just want to sort of emphasize that there is no real evidence of the building sort of moving or sinking or so forth. I think that when people see evidence of water infiltration, what they're more than likely have seen over the years is either a leaking roof or leaking pipes. And I know that was another concern also.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Locker, may I ask a question? It's David.
Yes,
How
sir.
are you? On the Tollgate variant with the atrium or heart of the school, is the height of the school still the same, or are you proposing in that plan that it goes up even higher?
No, the building's got enough stories right now. So and besides which, in all my years of doing this, I've only found one building that was designed to have a rooftop addition, but the codes changed between when it was built and when we were doing our work, and we couldn't add on to it anyway. So it is as tall as it will ever be.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure by the schematic there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're basically just cutting a hole in it. And oh, by the way, the entry into Tollgate is rather awkward. You're entering into a 200,000 plus square foot building, and you're going into this small subway-like space that has no public significance. It's practical and it works, and now it's got better safety and security, but it's not the kind of space that is a gesture of hello to either the kids on a daily basis or visitors. We think that with our option C and that notion of cutting the hole in, that opening would dribble all the way down to the drop off. And so you'll pick that up immediately upon entry. It'll be a wonderful welcome.
And one other question. Obviously, this is the exterior portion of the show, but the spaces inside of the buildings would also change too, right? Because I look at Pilgrim. My kids went to Pilgrim, and to me, Pilgrim is an industrial building. It's a corridor with rooms.
Yep.
Right. Like I assemble this on this room, I assemble that on that room. Right.
Yeah.
It's completely outdated, and Tollgate's very similar too. A corridor with rooms. the more the spaces are open, and for lack of a better word, inviting, I think that has an impact on everybody within that building.
Right. No, exactly right. And so, yes, I would say that one of the essential characteristics of a 20th century building was to slice and dice space and curriculum and keep everybody apart. What we're trying to do in the 21st century is integrate the curriculum and bring people together. We're trying to make relationships. We're trying to have people working with each other and just think of your own world of work and what the difference is between working in isolation and working with others. So to do that, it means making strategic modifications to the existing building. The fortunate thing about Pilgrim is that it's a columns and beam building. So we don't have bearing walls to keep bumping into all the time. And we've got much more liberty in how to make an opening and make a connection. So I've done this a number of times. So I'm confident that we can make a building that will work and feel as good as new construction, in fact, for much less dollars. So it's got value for money with option C. Option C.
Right. Thank you. And I'll finish by saying the students in those buildings, when they go into the workplace, just to your point, they're going into workplaces that are different from their parents or their grandparents' workplaces. It's much more open. It's much more designed to foster collaboration and communication. The days of everybody in offices all holed up. Those went the way of the dodo. So I'm very encouraged by what you put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm the moderator. Judith, I saw your hand first.
Yes, hi, nice to see you. It's been a while. It's
Good to be
unfortunate
back
that
with you. Yes. Yes.
I have a question. I'm getting feedback though, bad feedback.
I think if no one's speaking, we need to mute.
But others have their microphones on. The roof on the building, we had our meeting. I actually went to Pilgrim and that roof, they leak in the same places that
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Ms. Bonin, can you just mute everyone? And then Ms. Cobden can unmute herself. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. My question is about the roofing on Pilgrim. Is it going to be a pitched roof now? Or are we still going to continue having a flat roof? You need to turn your mic on.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I've got mine on, and I'm going to ask Ed to turn his on because he's done the physical assessment and he knows all about those roofs. But we will not be putting a pitched roof on. We will be putting on a state-of-the-art insulated low pitch roof, not quite flat.
Okay, that was something that I was passionate about when we had our all-day event, because like I said, I go into my old high school, which is Pilgrim, and the leaks are still in the exact same places, and it's a new roof. So I'm hoping that we can solve those problems.
Yeah. Ed, you want to comment? Okay, thank you, Judith. Ed, you want to add any more to that?
Just in general, just briefly, it would be a low pitch roof. It would have overflow drains. It would be drained properly, and it would have a PVC roofing membrane, which is much more durable than sort of the EPDM or the rubber roofs that were often used. So
awesome. Thank you. That was a big concern for me. Anyone else? Karen, did you have your hand
There was
up,
a yes.
Marcus?
Yes, Karen had. Karen, you're muted.
Turn your mic on.
Hi, F, how you doing? No, I've got
Karen, are you on your phone?
Huh?
Are you currently on your phone as well?
Yeah, because I can't.
If you
I've got
mute
the
your
phone volume
oh,
off. Is that better?
no, I think your phone is picking it up and then just making a cycle.
Hello?
Perfect.
Sorry, no video. I can't get video on here. But my question is about number C, or letter C, I should say, at Tollgate. The parking, it looks like the parking lots remain in the same place. They don't get moved up to where the fields are to create that great kid space magnet.
Yes, to clarify, the existing building takes up an awful lot of space between the well, there's not a whole lot of room there, let's put it that way. And so it was only in the quote unquote new where we had the space available from where the building footprint was that we were able to find any space for a reasonable amount of parking. And that was where I said we had the Spanish Steps idea, which if you're familiar with that landmark in Rome, a set of public steps that traverse about 5 stories.
I'm familiar.
Okay, but the thing that's so wonderful about them is it's done in a manner that you actually enjoy going up the 5 stories. And so that would be our goal with that option.
Thank you.
Yeah, and while that was wonderful, that was high value for that one, but we had a hard time justifying the extra 20 million or so it was going to take to get that.
I don't know how we're going to get the 300 million. So,
well, I don't know that either, but I think our job is to try to look for the opportunities, make them as smart as possible, each one for what it is, and then pass to you the harder job of figuring out how you will pay for this.
I agree. That's not your job at all.
Frank, I have a 2-part question. First piece would be, I know this can vary, but with option C in both buildings, what is your estimate for shovel in the ground to completion? And then second, you did this work kind of like pre-COVID, and pricing now, it can change over time. So what do you estimate pricing to be, if we go forward now? So part 1, ballpark timeframe. Part 2, pricing, how it might escalate with, post-COVID.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ed to cover the timing, but since I've got the floor, we did escalate the costs, and they were on that sheet that showed the comparison between them, and it's been escalated to 2022 for a bid date. And that's a general reference. When we say 2022 bid date, that doesn't mean we're going out. I mean, a bond vote. I'm sorry, 2022 bond vote. That doesn't mean we're going to start building the day after. That means it kicks a process in that will take months before we get out to bid. But let me just look at, I went over it so quickly and referenced the cost, but I didn't elaborate on any of them. Looking at this, it looks like we've looked at escalating them 3.5% to 5%, and that looks like it roughly adds about 5 really crude on Pilgrim, roughly adds about 5 4 to 7 million, and on toll gate adds about 4 to 8 million.
Thank you.
And these, David, by the way, I've given this presentation to Tony, excuse me, to Tony for posting on the website. So maybe you can read it in the morning. Ed?
Yeah, not much to add. I mean, I just want to expand a little bit on what these escalation numbers mean. So annually, the cost of things go up. Our estimators have tracked these costs. In the last couple of years, we've seen the escalation or the cost increase to be about 3.5% per year. So we're using that, but we also put in the 5% just because although we don't have a crystal ball, the general consensus is that once the pandemic ends, things may heat up, so to speak, and get maybe perhaps a bit more expensive. So we put a range there to be a little more realistic. But again, 3.5%, 4% is a pretty good target that's held up.
Thank you. And how about shovel and ground to end, Ed? A rough time frame for option C?
So Frank, do you have that slide handy? I believe it's we're predicting 3 years for construction beginning. Is that correct? I don't remember that one off the top of my head. I think it's 36 months.
Sorry, let me unmute myself and let me go back to that. I want to go to, yes, for Pilgrim option C, we planned 36 months. And for Tollgate option C, we also planned for 36 months.
Thank you.
So I have another question that's kind of related to that. So for the sake of discussion, say this all flies and the voters overwhelmingly approve this and we get started, right? How the disruption to the students, right? So if we tackle 2 high schools at once, can the school still be utilized while this goes on, or do we need to find, alternative spaces?
Mm-hmm.
How does that typically work?
It's a great question. We've given thought to that. I'm gonna have Ed tell you the concept and the details on it.
Yeah, so our thinking is that the students would remain in the school. And it's actually a reason when you look at the slides again, you'll see that new construction, we're estimating to take less time because it's more complexity involved with moving the kids around the school and utilizing those summer breaks also. But I think generally the idea is that the project begins by adding on new classroom space, which will give the flexibility to move students into new spaces and work and renovate the older spaces. And it's very similar to what was done at Lincoln High School, if you're familiar with that project.
Yes, I am.
They remained in that building. They had a little bit of extra space there, so they were able to do this. It's a complex task, but it's doable.
Okay.
It takes some planning, obviously, and logistics to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Any more questions? I guess we're questioned out. I do want to, besides, it's wonderful that we're back on track on this. I do want to mention right now to the community that we are having a meeting next week, and it's for the community, and they can engage in it and ask questions. And it's very important, and we want to hear from people on this. I know a lot of people were coming to our public events, and then right after, I think it was like weeks after we did one, COVID happened. So we, I hope, and we all hope, that everybody that was involved come back, and those that weren't involved will please join too, because it's important, because this is your kids' schools. This is your community. I encourage kids to come and ask questions because they could be occupying these schools by the time they get to high school. So I encourage all of you, the whole community, to come and feel free to take the time and ask questions. And thank you very much, Ed and Frank, for you know, continuing through this. I know it hasn't been that easy for all of us with it. But I think this is it's a happy moment. So it's nice to feel like we're moving forward again. So thank you.
Thank you, Judith. It's good to be back with you, and I will agree with you. It's a happy moment. I'm so pleased to have been able to present this to you, and I think we, with the community comments and our education oversight community and our administrators, have been able to do thorough, deep thinking, not only about what buildings are appropriate for you, but also educational concepts that go with them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay, I'm trying to get my agenda. Found it.
I think she
You know,
froze.
March
No, we
31st.
lost our audio.
Am I here?
You're here. We just lost your audio for a moment.
Okay, Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting is March 31st at 4. And the monthly school committee meeting will be on April 13th. So for the next Tuesdays, this is where we will be. So I want to thank everyone again for participating and coming, and we look forward to March 30th. Can I
Excuse me.
have,
Excuse me,
yes,
is
Ms. Bond.
is the health and wellness, is that on YouTube or anything, or do you have to go to see what's going on?
I don't have it set up on YouTube, no. I don't think any
Gonna
of our
be
committee,
Zoom or,
I don't think any of our committee meetings have been on there. Yes, it will be on Zoom.
well, the health and wellness committee is a little bit different than any other committee because it's mandated by the state. And so there are different regs for that than there are for other committees that we have.
Well, I will work
Just in
with
case
Mr.
you're
Taylor.
interested, I'm just like making the point.
I mean, I could put the link up and talk to Mr. Taylor about this, but I could do that. I'll speak to Mr. Hennius about it too.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Locker and Mr. Bourget.
Thank you. Enjoyed being with you.